Today, I'm going to show you an easy thing you can do with all the apples you're going to pick this fall when you go apple picking. All you're going to need is a few simple ingredients, so let's get started. This is a really simple recipe that you can't mess up, but you can change up however you want. First, you're going to need a crock pot, some spices, and some apples, of course, juice or water, and then maybe some dried fruit if you want to add in a little bit of extra something. With this recipe, or any recipe really, it just comes down to ratios and the way that you want to switch it up. So once you get your base core recipe down, you can go from there and the possibilities are really endless. You may just have to change up the math depending on what you're doing, but I'm going to show you how to do this in the smallest quantity possible so that way you can expand it if you need to. But this really is a recipe for a party of 2 or more. Of course, if you have the time and space to do this in a larger batch, please do, because this cans and keeps very well. You can keep this recipe simple and just do an apple-cinnamon combination, or you can get really creative like I am today and do something with apple, strawberries, mint, basil, whatever your little heart desires or finds tasty. So the first thing you're going to do is get out your nice clean crock pot and get ready to load that up with apples. This is a 2-quart crock pot that I'm using just to give you a spatial size for my recipe today. You can peel and chop your apples. You don't have to peel them if you don't want to, but I prefer them that way. And then throw them into your crock pot. Super simple. You really can't mess this part up whatsoever. Before you add the spices though, you might want to keep track of how many apples you're going to put in there, because that's going to determine your spice recipe. Whether you're mix and matching spices is totally up to you, but what I like to do for adding spices to this recipe is for every 6 apples, add 2 tablespoons of spices. So that can be 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, or 2 tablespoons of basil, or a tablespoon of cinnamon and a tablespoon cardamom, or a tablespoon of ginger and a tablespoon of sage. You can really take these ratios and run with them and mix and match them up to be whatever suits your taste palette and the desired end result here. Now, if you are choosing to add dried fruit, this would be the time when you would want to do that. You can be a little liberal with this or not so much, depending on really what you like. But you're going to want to make sure that it comes to about 3/4 of the top of the crock pot. So I am just adding a handful, or about 1/4 of a cup, of dried strawberries to my recipe today. You can also choose to add something like cranberries if you like, apricots, oranges, whatever you feel like would make the tastiest stewed applesauce. Sometimes I just switch this recipe up depending on what I have in my dehydrator at the time. Now this last part is easy but also interchangeable. You're just going to cover your fruit with either a juice or a water. I'm using a cranberry apple cocktail to add a little bit of extra flavor and a little bit of extra sweetness as well, because while you can add sugar to this recipe, you may not want to, and you probably don't need to if you're using a juice. You can absolutely keep this super simple and basic and just add water if you enjoy the taste of how fruit tastes. But if you're someone who's used to having a more sugary palate, you may want to go for a juice to add a little bit of extra sweetener. Just go ahead and cover them all the way up, and then the magic starts to happen. So grab your lid and go ahead and cover up your fruit, and then set your crock pots to low. You're going to want to wait a few hours for this and keep checking back depending on the size of your recipe, but eventually they're going to look just like this. Stewed and chunky, and you can keep breaking them apart and making them smaller as you go, and then they're all yours to enjoy. This batch took about 8 hours to complete and probably about 30 minutes of prep time. Let me know in the comments below if you happen to try this and what combinations you like to try. Happy cooking!